Good morning and welcome back to another episode of Careers and Coffee. My name is Kayleigh and I shall be your host for today's episode. On today's episode, we have John Tatton, plant manager at Suez, and Jonathan Norris, ex-apprentice and now permanent full-time employee, joining us. In today's episode, we shall be discussing career paths, career transition, apprenticeships, and much more. So let's welcome on John and Jonathan. Hi both. Hello,
Hi.
How are you?
Yeah, we're really well, thank you. Fine, thanks.
Good. Okay, so to kick it off, can you tell everyone what your current job roles are?
So my current job role is the plant manager at the energy from waste site at Great Blakenham and Ipswich.
And my current job role is a E&I maintenance technician, so it's electrical and instrumentation technician here at Great Blakenham.
Okay, so that sounds very technical. So what does your average work days look like?
That's a good question. My average work day is all about communication, really. Communicating both to external stakeholders like the Environment Agency, like the people that provide us with waste, but also balancing that off with speaking with the internal stakeholders. So my line manager, and the guys within the plant, making sure they've got the resources that they need to do a good job and keep the plant up and running.
My job role is to keep the plant up and running. So generally day to day, we are solving any faults that come in overnight and carrying out preventative maintenance on the plant to try to prevent anything going wrong, sort of when it shouldn't. So prevent breakdowns, keep things running smoothly and solve anything that does go wrong.
Amazing, thank you. And John, can you tell us a bit more about your business and what exactly does it do?
So I work for a company called Suez. If you're not in the waste industry, you've probably never heard of us. I certainly hadn't done before I joined the company. We're the third or fourth, depending where you look, biggest waste operator in the world. We've got 89,000 employees on all 5 continents, and we do waste management, and we also do a lot of waste water management. The bit of Suez that I'm in is Suez Recycling and Recovery, so that's the UK version, and we are purely waste management. So we've got everything you can think of in waste management, from recycling facilities, from bin collections, landfill, all the way through to the energy from waste plants, which we run in Great Blakenham.
Amazing. And so when, and this question's to both of you, when you first joined Suez, what was the most interesting element that you learned?
For me, I came from, it'll probably come up later, but I came from the military, from military aviation. And as you can imagine in aviation, everything's very light and very small. Waste to energy is predominantly heavy engineering. So everything's very big and very heavy. So it's maintenance, but it's totally different to what I'd ever experienced in the past. So it was a steep learning curve for me. You know, you talk about a valve in aviation and you can hold it in the palm of your hand. You talk about a valve in energy from waste, and you probably need lifting equipment to get it out of operation. So equipment with the same name, but vastly different than anything I'd ever experienced.
Now, I think for myself, obviously, I came straight in as an apprentice. So this entire sector, this entire world was vastly new to me. Again, it will probably come up later, but I had an engineering qualification. So I had an inkling as to what I was coming into, but certainly using waste in this manner was never something that I'd ever really considered before working here. But yes, everything was new, the process, the basic job role. So it was all quite a steep learning curve for me.
And we will pick up on actually your apprenticeship journey as well a little later during the interview. So I have the understanding that Suez, what Suez does, it's much better than landfill. So can you explain a little bit more about this?
Yes, of course. Obviously, Suez does landfill. I mentioned it earlier. Landfill has got a place in the waste hierarchy, but it sits below that of waste to energy. Waste to energy is the preferred option. It's much cleaner. It doesn't use natural resources, so if you're burning waste to generate electricity, you're not using coal, oil, gas, etc., etc. The recycling rate of metals is greatly improved in energy from waste. If you can imagine, if everything goes into a landfill, it sits there forever. In the energy from waste process, the metal will get recycled at the end of the process. So that's good there. It's much cleaner. The issues with landfill is once it's there for a very long time. Even when it's closed off, you still need to manage it for contamination, for leachate, which is contaminated water, and it also produces a lot of methane, which can be used for a resource, but it's also a greenhouse gas. So energy from waste, much cleaner. Landfill, I wouldn't say dirtier, but it's a long-term problem, way beyond when the landfill's finished use.
And it's really great to hear that as well, especially with the current focus on the climate as well. So that's great to hear. And I'd be really interested, and those watching as well, to learn more about both of your careers paths as well. So can you explain kind of your journey and your career path?
Yeah, of course, I'll be with me. Yeah. So as I alluded to earlier, I started off in the Army. I joined the Army Apprentice College, so I was an apprentice myself, but not in the traditional form. Just shy of my 17th birthday, I completed a 2-year apprenticeship in the Army Apprentice College, Reading. I then went on to be an aircraft technician and naturally progressed in the Army from a technician to a supervisor, to a manager, and then to more senior management roles. Once I left the Army, I had 2 job interviews actually. One was to stick with aviation, and one was a spur of the moment interview with a little known waste management company called Suez. I got offered the plant engineer role, which I accepted. I did that for about 2 years, and then when the incumbent maintenance manager left, I took over the maintenance manager role, and then when the incumbent plant manager left, I took over the plant manager role. And that's where I sit now as the plant manager of Suffolk Energy from Waste. And I think I've been here now 7 years, so quite a rapid progression really through from aviation through to I wouldn't say an expert in energy from waste, but not far off it.
Yeah, thank you. And Jonathan, what about yourself?
Yeah, so my career path is not entirely dissimilar in sort of the way I left. So I obviously did school, sort of set myself up in line for engineering with GCSE options, etc. Went on to college, did a BTEC at college in engineering, so it's a national diploma in engineering. And then when I left there, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do, so I looked at a mixture of things, and one that popped up was on my doorstep, and that was here as an apprentice at Suez. Very nice and local, so went for the interview there and got the job, luckily. So spent 3 years as an apprentice before managing to complete it a little bit ahead of schedule, where I was taken on by the company as a full-time maintenance technician here, and have been doing that job role since. I've sort of now been in the company just over 6 years.
Amazing, thank you. And we're going to definitely get on to your apprenticeship journey there as well. And so, John, we've had a question come through. So what was the biggest challenge transferring from the Army to the private sector?
The biggest challenge, it's really just, to be honest, for me personally, there was very little challenge. I think a lot of people who leave the Army, so I'm speaking for other people now, not for me, leave unprepared. So they know they've got a limited contract within the Army, and then when it comes to their final day, they've not done enough preparation. I was quite astute in that I knew it was coming to an end, and I spent my whole Army career making sure that when I took my green uniform off and put on a shirt and tie, that I have the right qualifications to impress potential employees. So as I said, preparation is the key. I only had 2 interviews. I got 2 job offers, so there was very little challenges for me, and I think it's testament to the skills that the Army have given me. So I can't answer the question directly because it was a pretty straightforward transition for me. But I think preparation is the key, and certainly if you're leaving the armed forces, just recognition that you've got a number of skills which you can use in the civilian world extremely effectively. You just need to know how to package them.
Yeah, that's some great advice there. Thank you. And Jonathan, coming on to you. So did you always know that you wanted to do an apprenticeship?
No, is the honest answer. I sort of set myself up to go to university.
Yeah.
I did my BTEC, obviously got the best grade that I could, and the door was open. To be honest, I had enough UCAS to go. But sort of coming out of BTEC, obviously done high school, done 2 more years in education. I sort of wanted to mix things up a little bit. The routine of here's an assignment, off you go, hand it back, here's another one, off you go. After a while, it got to a point where I wanted to be sort of in the working world, getting real problems rather than theoretical problems. Still learning, still progressing, but with a little bit more challenge than a book and a notepad. So that was sort of why I went the apprenticeship route. I didn't really see how much more benefit at that time a degree would give me over this apprenticeship route. So that's ultimately why I came this way.
Amazing. Is there any other benefits of doing an apprenticeship that you wanted to highlight?
I think it's more the hands-on practical knowledge that you gain as well as theoretical. I think theory has its place. I think the great thing with an apprenticeship is you learn from people who have been in the role a long time. You learn the quick ways to solve problems rather than always the more technical theory ways. I think that's very important.
Okay, so we've got a fire alarm here, would you believe? So we're going to have to vacate the building, and we'll be back as quickly as we can. So if you can just ad-lib, Kayleigh, for a few minutes, we'll try and get back as quickly as we can.
Yeah, not a problem. Thank you.
Sorry, give us 5 minutes.
There's nothing better than on live streams when these things happen, but it's been really interesting so far. We've got some really good information around apprenticeship, and as well as those journeys of transitioning maybe from one job role to the other. And I think some of the key aspects which John focused on was about being prepared. So when you go into one career, that may not always be the career that you stay into, but being prepared and seeing how you can transition from one to the other is really great. I can hear that alarm going off still in the background, but hopefully they will be back on soon, because we do have some more apprenticeship questions for them, for Jonathan, and we'd like to speak to him more about the if there was any aspects that he struggled with during doing an apprenticeship, and if he would like to go on to do a higher apprenticeship as well than one that he has previously done. And we will also be speaking more about online learning whilst learning at work, but our guests will be back shortly once they have sorted out the fire alarm. So hopefully we can get them back soon. Please remember as well, if there is any questions that you would like to ask John or Jonathan, do keep putting them in the chat box, and we can ask them as well as we go throughout this interview. So if you have any questions at all on apprenticeships, maybe on the job learning, I know that John is very passionate about helping people to learn on the job and progress as well. If you have any questions on maybe the greener side of things, about landfill as well, that would be brilliant to ask, because at the moment in the current climate, we know that there is a focus on how we can be doing more for our planet and how we can be a little bit greener as well. So any questions around that, please do put in the chat box. I think as well, Josie is now showing a video for us.
Manager at the Suffolk Energy from Waste Facility. If you came to spend a day with me, you'd see me doing quite a few diverse things. Part of my role is to make sure that my client, Suffolk County Council, is serviced correctly. You'd also see me working towards the site being a safe facility to work at, where everyone that works here and visits here is kept safe. You'd also see me working to ensure the facility does not damage the environment, that any emissions from the facility are controlled. And you'd also see me managing people. The most important parts of my role are really to ensure that people are kept safe and everybody goes home without being injured or without being hurt. We must ensure that this facility does not damage the environment in any way. So the tight controls that are put upon us by the Environment Agency are followed absolutely to the letter. We don't operate this just to the council. It is a business, so I have to ensure that the site is profitable. Before I worked for Suez, I started my career in heavy industry, which was the cement industry, where I started out as a mechanical engineer. From that, I moved into the extractive industries, where I was a quarry and landfill manager. So there I was in charge of production and processing on a very large quarry and landfill site. And being in the landfill business naturally brought me into the waste industry. And I first came into the waste industry in a processing role in a materials recycling facility. That does a very similar role to an energy from waste facility, but deals with dry recyclables. And now I've come into energy from waste, which deals with residual waste. My role is very diverse. Operations deals with a lot of factors on site through processing, vehicle movements, health and safety. So it's very, very diverse. So no 2 days are the same. Every day throws up its challenges, and it becomes a very, very satisfying role to be in. The skills for an operations manager are built really around man management, around process safety and problem solving. Ideally, for an operations manager, you should be from either an engineering or a processing background. And to reach an operations manager level, you'd need some reasonably high qualifications in those areas, either be educated at HNC or to degree level to come into this type of role. Okay, my favourite subjects at school were maths and science, particularly physics and chemistry. I like those subjects because they're very black and white. They're very, it is or it isn't type subjects.
Hello. So welcome back, Jonathan and John. It's great to have you back. How was that? Was everything okay?
It was just a false alarm, and thank you, Kayleigh, my operations manager, for saving the day with a video.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's nice to play that, get a different perspective as well. Jonathan, so although you've just jumped back on screen, I'm going to dive straight back in again and asking you some apprenticeship questions, if that's okay. Yeah. I'd like to, if you could maybe give a little bit of information on about that transition from school and education into that apprenticeship, and was there any aspects that you struggled with at all?
I think for myself, not particularly, because the sort of the college environment that I was in was quite an adult environment anyway. They aimed to make it like a workplace, although we're at college. Whilst I was at college, I also had a part-time job, so I was sort of doing this working and learning thing together. And I think that really is what an apprentice or an apprenticeship is all about. It's about the working environment and the learning environment. So for me, I was actually working somewhat less than I was when I was at college and doing my part-time job. So it was slightly easier than what I was doing before, but also having the nice thing of you being in the exact career that you want to be in engineering.
Yeah. And what level was your apprenticeship, and what was it like working and gaining that qualification at the same time?
So my level was level 3, so it's a national diploma, advanced apprenticeship. It was relatively easy, to be honest. I think it was something that you pick up certain skills at work that you then sort of transfer across to the theory. So when they're teaching you something theoretical, you can relate to a real life scenario. I think that always helps. And it worked in exactly the other way as well. This will go off in a second, don't worry.
Those things, we're doing a live stream, so it happens.
There we go. So yeah, it worked in exactly the same way, in reverse, as it were. So I pick up things at college and then I apply them into real life scenarios at work. So they really went hand in hand and helped each other, I think.
Amazing. And are there actually any, we've got this question just come through, so are there currently apprenticeships available at Suez?
There's always apprenticeships available at Suez. They would be advertised on our vacancy website for any that are open now. Speaking for Suffolk Energy from Waste, we have 2 apprentices on site. We've got a mechanical apprentice and we have an office admin apprentice. When the mechanical apprentice graduates, which I believe is next year, then we'll be looking to fill another role, probably, if I have my way, for an operations-based apprentice. So somebody who doesn't focus on fixing the plant, somebody who focuses on running the plant. So there's no vacancies at Suffolk today, but hopefully next year there'll be at least 1 vacancy.
That's great, thank you. And John, I know that you are a big advocate of apprenticeships. Can you explain a little bit why you feel this way?
I just think an apprenticeship is a massive opportunity for both parties, both the employee and the employer. The employer gets to teach the apprentice what he wants to teach him, so he learns his way. He also gets to get a good long look at him to make sure it's the right person for the company. So there's benefits there for the apprentice, for the employee. I think the world's their oyster. If they can get an apprenticeship, particularly in a big company at a young age, then you've got bags and bags of room for growth. I think it offers massive opportunities. I mean, just take John for example. Now he's got youth on his side. He's completed his apprenticeship. He's got offered a permanent role. He will go onwards and upwards within Suez now, without a shadow of a doubt.
That's amazing to hear.
Because he's the right person in the right role for Suez.
Oh, that's amazing. See, and Jonathan's got to try and get out the door now. I bet he's loving all those compliments. But we've just had a really interesting question come through. So how many megawatts are generated by the site, and how many homes does that support with household electricity?
That's we generate about 24 megawatts, and it's about 30,000 homes.
Wow.
Which is small fry in the big scheme of things when you look at nuclear power stations. But if you have lots of small waste to energy plants, then obviously the megawatts add up.
No, that's amazing. Thank you so much. That's really interesting. And for your roles, what skills do you feel are important for the roles that you're currently in?
Well, my role as a senior manager, communication is paramount. I need to be able to talk to people at all levels. I also need to be organised. If I'm not on my game, I can't expect anybody else to be on their game. And I also think you need a little, particularly in energy from waste, you need a little bit of a technical aptitude, because the plant is quite a complex beast, and you quickly become overwhelmed if you didn't have that technical background.
I think, yeah, so in my role, I think you need to have a little bit of self-motivation about you. We have improvement projects and things that we're looking at, how to make things work, not only just keep them working, make them work better. You definitely need to be organised. It's very, very easy when you're dealing with lots and lots of different individual components to let things slip. I think you need to keep on track of what you're doing at all times. And generally, I think you've got to have a certain frame of mind. Sort of, people used to say it's like a logical frame of mind. So when you attack something, it's very easy, especially in the electrical world, to be a bit daunted by thousands of wires. So I think you have to have that mindset that looks at it and can break it down just by sort of working through things slowly, rather than trying to attack a fault all at one go, because you'll never ever do that.
Yeah, that's great insight there. And to put you guys more in the hot seat, which skills do you feel like you're currently working on yourself?
I think you can always be a better communicator. If I say the word communication once, I say it 100 times a day. So I think you can always improve your communication skills.
I think from my perspective, it's probably a little bit about being organised, but sort of job management, I think, would be an important skill. It's easy to pick up the stuff that we sort of call the meaty problems, the things that are the most interesting, and let the more routine slip. So I think it's really important to have that frame of mind where you prioritise all jobs equally and sort of work through them, rather than just going for the ones that interest you the most.
Yeah, that's great. And it's great to see that you're still working on that development as well, even in your own roles that you're still in. We've had another question come through. So how much waste does the plant process?
The plant processes, if we meet our permit requirements, 295,000 tonnes of waste a year.
Yeah, that's a big number.
And it's all your black bin waste, so it's not recycled waste, it's all your black bin waste. The smelly waste is what I tell the children when we have school visits. That's the waste we process.
And has the waste handling and your jobs changed much during lockdown?
In the first lockdown, we staggered the maintenance department, so we had less people on site. We've now got a few port cabins on site now, so we can afford to spread out a little. So I should imagine your job's changed very little.
Yeah, not much at all.
Mine is exactly the same, but I just talk about social distancing, COVID-19, and use all them words a hell of a lot more than I ever used to do. But it's the same job, just with the additional pressures of trying to keep people engaged but socially distanced, and reminding them that we rely on people to run this plant here, and if they go down, if they don't protect themselves, and we lose people, we're off. If we can't process the waste, then we're in a bit of a pickle. It'll end up going to landfill, which is what nobody wants.
Yeah. And one final question to end on for you both. So what would be your advice to a young person who was interested in your roles?
I think for any role, to be honest, I think for a young person, two bits of advice. First and foremost is always take an opportunity to impress people, whether it's superiors, whether it's your peers, whether it's people lower down the chain than you. Always take the opportunity to impress, because once people speak highly of you, the word gets round, and people's perceptions, whether you're hopefully you are very good, but people's perceptions become, I won't say tainted, but become steered by that. So if you get people at the lower level saying, oh yeah, John's great, and he says that to the right person, eventually that will get to the decision makers. And when you come for that additional role, that promotion, you're in a good place. If you've upset people along the way, you've got a mountain to climb. And my second bit would be a big up for the waste industry, really. It's obviously not the obvious career of choice when you leave school. On the outside looking in, it's not the most glamorous, but there's massive opportunities within the waste industry for the right people. And once you get in, you can diversify, and the world's your oyster. There's a lot of people within Suez with very well-paid careers.
I think from my point of view, I would say anyone who wants to get into this sort of engineering role, I would say sort of start young, start simple, and build yourself up from there. Get hands-on early. I mean, from a very young age, I was annoying my parents, breaking all my Christmas presents just to know how they work. And I think that's really, really important, because that little bit of technical interest, that little bit of technical knowledge, this is just a big scale of it. If you've got a little toy car, we're a big version of that. So start young, sort of learn your trades from there, and then just build up as you get older.
Amazing. Well, listen, thank you so much for both for joining us today. It's been really, really interesting. It's been eventful, but it's been really interesting. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, you're welcome.
You're all the welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So it's such a great episode today, and we've touched on some really, really interesting topics. So thank you again to John and Jonathan, and we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at 12:30 for our next episode of Careers and Coffee.